going to again invite everybody up. We have a very illustrious panel. It's actually a pretty diverse group because going from social to B2B, real money back to social is there's a lot of complexity, there's a lot of diversity in it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to basically have everyone introduce themselves and kind of talk a little bit about their take and their position in the market, because again, it's a very diverse panel. So why don't we go ahead and start with this?
Here we go. Hi, my name is Haig Sakouyan with a company called BlueBat Games out in Vancouver, Canada. We're in the social casino space, but we focus on the business side. So we have a social casino white label platform. And that's myself. I've spent also time in both social and real. And yeah, that's all I really have to say.
Matthew Cullen, I'm the CEO of Manuel Digital, which is the interactive arm of the Manuel tribe based out of Southern California. We operate a very large casino business to the east of LA. It's the closest full casino to the LA market. I've been in the industry for about 8 years. Never been on the B2B side, but have run several social businesses straight to the consumer, and we have a B2B relationship right now with a provider to provide a social casino offering.
Darion Lowenstein, I'm the CMO at Gamblit Gaming. Background is in producing and directing games at like EA, Rockstar, Activision, Scopely, and I switched into casino about a year and a half to join Gamblit, and we're basically bringing arcades back to life by bringing more modern arcade-style games into the casino floor as opposed to slot machines where there's basically no interaction.
Hi, I'm Rich Roberts. I'm the CEO of DraftDay Gaming Group, which is one of the B2B daily fantasy sports products. And previous to here, I was with Sport Tech, where I built the team that I put together, built the iGaming platform for resorts in New Jersey. And previous to that, I was the CEO of Slingo, which was the original game that was a social game back in the 90s that went to casino, that went back to social, then back to casino. So there's a lot of interesting things to talk about there.
Larry DeMar. For 20 years, I made pinball and video machines, video games out in Chicago. In 1996, they reorganized my department to take over part of the slot crew, and a guy named Al Thomas came into my group, and he really taught me everything I needed to learn about gaming to get going. I've been doing casino land-based slot machines for the last 20 years. And along with Ruby 7 Studios and 2x2 Gaming, where my partner Joshi's out in the audience, we've been doing social casino games for the last 3 or 4 years under the brand Trop World, Lucky North, and Ruby 7 Video Poker.
All right, so like I said before, there's a lot of interesting differences between real money and in the social world. One of the questions that I have is, do you see the rise of simulated gaming where it's very much like a real money slot except in a social environment, or do you see more of the social interaction being entirely different? Is there a convergence between real money and social in terms of the style of the game? So let's start off with any of you guys who want to answer.
Yeah, so let's say from our perspective, we're seeing that there tends to be a market for both types of games. I think the previous mindset might have been that standard types of games may not have worked as well online, but we're finding that there are people that like these types of games, and there are other people who like kind of the more sort of full of animation types of games. And so yeah, we're seeing both. And actually, it was interesting. There was another talk earlier today that talked about finding the target markets and demographics and people liking specific things where you don't necessarily need to cater to each individual person with one particular game. You can have multiple types of games. So that's sort of what we're seeing, that there are different types of people that like different types of games. You can cater to all of them.
And I guess I'll jump to Darion for a second, because you're kind of really on the looking at the more arcadey sort of stuff. And so what's your take on, is there a convergence between real money and the arcade social stripe?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing that I'm seeing, that really the reason the company exists, is just there's a dramatic demand from the consumer for a new type of gambling experience. So the type of stuff that we've launched online in the UK is not traditional casino in terms of slots or blackjack or poker. It's more stuff like, you know, Angry Birds and Candy Crush and those types of more traditional mobile games. And that's what we're bringing onto the casino floor as well, because, you know, we've seen just a sort of massive demand from operators on the Strip and as well as Tribal to get games that are more like what people are actually playing on their phones today. So stuff that is skill-based, stuff that has a lot of interaction and more kind of gameplay, as opposed to a lot of the stuff that's being offered on the floor, which really hasn't changed in the last 50 or 60 years.
I really love the Gamblit stuff and what you guys are doing in terms of really pushing the envelope and giving a new kind of experience. On our side, we are a casino, a real money casino game maker. And it's been pretty clear that games that work in the casinos that work well in casinos almost always work well in social. And there's a lot of room to do other types of games in social, and it's really great. But anytime you do something new in social, it's a little more of a speculative effort. So we're doing a little bit of both, and we are using the lower regulatory environment of social to use that as a laboratory for games that we're going to start in social, and if we get traction, we're going to bring them to the casinos, because it's a much longer road to make a game that is bulletproof, totally complete, tested out, and through the regulatory channels, very expensive and a very long timeline, whereas in social we can make a game very quickly, put it out half done if necessary, continue to improve it, look at the reaction, respond to the players, get the game to where it works really well, and then if we can get traction there, it'll be a much easier sell to casino partners.
San Manuel, how are you seeing the types of content you're delivering?
Yeah, I think the word simulated, I've always kind of wrestled with that. I don't know who came up with, I think I know the individual that may have...
I think there's a TM on it somewhere there, so
is that
someone
right?
came up with it.
Okay. I think those lines are getting blurred every day with every product release, because I think this people that have launched any of these simulated games, the games that you'd find, in New Jersey as an example, in a regulated environment, they're putting more social features and a wrapper, I think, around that stuff, and it's changing. It's getting more social. So I mean, the math models and everything are the same that you'd see online or in the casino, and then everything around the game, it seems like, are changing. Month by month, quarter by quarter, and I think that's only going to continue. So that, any of the casinos that are launching a social or a simulated product are going to be able to compete with, the more mainstream social operators that are out there.
Yeah, and Matt, you made a good point. The math model is what has made the casino games really successful. The social aspect around it is really just the eye candy around it, where people think they're playing a social game. I think you might know, was it Lord of the Rings that had the more social interaction with the slot game? Yeah, and it was really trying to get a younger player to the slot machine to play the game that basically had the same, had a very good math model to keep people playing. If you take a look at the top games that are in the casinos, they're the same games that are the top games I game in New Jersey, and they're the same games that are the top social games that are out there, on the mobile app. So it's really coming about how do you present that product properly in each of those different models.
So sticking with you for a little bit, the fantasy sports and those types of games, are they bringing in a different type of player, or is it a very similar kind of person that goes to a casino sports book? Or
it is dramatically different. The casinos and where you have the slot machines is a specific demographic. It's usually women, 40 plus that are the majority of the players. And when you look at daily fantasy, it's usually guys, 21 to 49. And they are generally going to the casino, to the nightclub. They're not going to the gaming floor for the most part. They're more younger. And this is where the casino operators are seeing an opportunity to bring the younger demographic into a sports bar, into a restaurant, and then have the ability to monetize them. And I'll give you an example. In Connecticut, at Sportech, we own the OTB. and we built some new sports bars, and we used daily fantasy to bring people in to hopefully bet on the races. Well, they didn't bet on the races, the horse racing. But what they did was started drinking a lot of craft beer. And within a few months, every Thursday night, it was sold out for craft beer. So this demographic will come in for certain reasons and stay for certain reasons. And how you use that type of product like daily fantasy, you know, is to the benefit of the casino operator to bring in a new demographic.
All right. So one of the other questions that I've had is moving from real money. It's a very heavily regulated business. There's a lot of intellectual property issues. Having those hurdles kind of lifted when you move into a social space, does it dramatically change the type of game that you guys have created or the type of experience you've created for the players? So start with anyone.
I don't think whether it's social, regulated, or unregulated, I think you've got IP challenges in either, especially given the fact that a lot of the game creators, as you know, are in both spaces. So I think there's some risk on either side of that. As far as moving from real money to social and so forth, I don't really have an opinion on that. But I think from an IP perspective, you can get hosed on either side of that equation.
Oh my God, I miss how easy I had it when I was just making mobile games that were not real money. The real money space has been like a punch in the face of how difficult it is to go through the gaming laboratories and the reviews and the cycles and the gaming commission, especially the fact that, we're doing skill games that haven't really been on the floor yet. Oh my God, it is so much work. And before I'd complain about, the iTunes review cycle is 9 days, and my update won't hit the consumer for 2 weeks. And now it's like, okay, it's 6 months to get an update onto the floor after I've submitted it. It's very, 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 very different process. So I miss how easy.
And when you find a bug, it's another 6 months.
No, it's the worst.
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit too. Back when I was on the real money side, online poker side, in general, things, and this is, just in general, I guess, but things move slowly. You have ideas, you want to iterate, and companies try to move quickly, but you typically, because of a whole bunch of reasons, you cannot move as fast as you'd like to move. On the social side, it's been quite a bit different. I mean, just thinking about it at a high level, you have far greater access to people to bring into your app, your game, compared to what you do on the real money side, because it's far more acceptable. You can advertise through channels in the U.S. you cannot do on the real side, and just the game experience. A lot of different things you can do in social that may actually work on the real side, but because of various reasons, because of maybe various beliefs, they aren't tried as much. And so I think in general, I've noticed a lot more flexibility on the social than I noticed on the real.
One thing in the real money world, especially in the casino market, is that each of the different jurisdictions has different limitations and rules, and we end up making a game kind of to the lowest common denominator that satisfies all the rules. And so you end up with different rates or different frequencies, different payback percentages, and you kind of, and it's always, what are we going to do for New Jersey is always what comes around. And in social, not only do we not have all, the intersection of all those rules, but we really have no rules at this point. I know a lot of the companies that we've talked to, they curate the visitor's experience where the new user comes on and gets extra lucky at the start. It's not something that we've done. We are from the casino business and sort of like to hold to what random numbers do, and because they do amazing things all by themselves. But with no regulation in social, there's a lot of things that can and are being done.
And the big word is yet.
So one of the things when I first made the leap from real money to social casino is everyone viewed social casino as just kind of a placeholder until legalization happened. And over the years, you've seen companies doing tremendously well. Some of the acquisitions, I remember when people said double down for $1 billion. That's insane. And now you're looking at numbers beyond that coming up. If there was legalization in the U.S., would social still go on the way it is? Would it be different? How do you guys see that playing out?
I mean, legalization in the U.S. Oof. I don't know. Will it ever happen? I feel like there's so many very public parties against it, from a lot of the major players in Vegas. I always question whether that will actually ever even happen.
Larry?
I think it will happen. I think it's going to be like everything else, where it'll be one state, then a couple more states, and it'll come progressively. I think that, as you see in Europe, there still is a social casino business there alongside real money, and socials will evolve or die. And it's most likely going to evolve by people getting clever and giving really great experiences, really fun games, new innovative things to keep it going alongside real money.
Yeah, and on top of that, when New Jersey put iGaming out, there was all these calls that it was going to be basically the end of the world as we knew it. And it's been going on for almost 3 years now, and there hasn't been one instance of someone underage gambling, an instance of someone outside of New Jersey gambling. And they hit the 100 million mark in the first half of this year, so they're on track for over 200 million, which, after its basically second full year in business, it's a pretty good business model. And I think it was the challenge for the rest of the industry was, like, the expectations were $1 billion in the first year, and the other states said, oh, they're only doing 125 million in the first year. And I think most of us said, well, that's a pretty good amount of money. I think now, when you see some of the numbers out there beyond the casino games, where you have sports betting illegal at $400 billion, right? And you've got politicians and saying, hey, we've got to tax that. And then you've got the National Council on Problem Gambling saying, well, we have to service those people. At some point, you got New Jersey's Third Circuit hearing that's going to be adjudicated very soon. At some point, something's going to have to happen. And I think, to your point, Larry, in the next 2, 3, or 5 years, you're going to see more states adopting it, and you're going to see a big call for sports betting to be legalized more than it is now.
So do you see fantasy sports kind of becoming the sports book of the future in that sort of situation?
Fantasy sports right now, it is what it is, right? It looks like a duck, it acts like a duck, it quacks like a duck, but in terms of the type of game it is, it's not. It's a skill-based game. And if you look at sites like gsn.com, where you can put $10 entry fee down, you can play against 1 or 20 people and win the pot. Daily fantasy is pretty much the same thing. Everybody has access to the same 1,600 players, and you fill in 9 different spots with players, and whoever wins. And you get the call, well, that's cheating. People are cheating because they have algorithms. Well, no, they built the algorithms. That's part of the process. Just like on GSN, if you were playing Bejeweled and you played it 1,000 times against someone who hasn't, you're just more skilled at it. So in terms of as a precursor to sports betting, I think that's how people are seeing it, and it's how it's being reacted to. But you're seeing the states now passing legislation for daily fantasy, but separating out that it's not sports betting yet. But it is going to be, I think, the standard bearer of how sports betting is going to happen state by state once it get past the federal law.
In talking a little bit about the B2B aspect of this, because early on, we were in the B2B business as a slot manufacturer, that we didn't sell to slot players, we sold to casinos. And then in social, when we got involved, it was a lot of B2C. How's the B2B business in social? Like, is it a great relationship with the real money gaming providers? Or is there more of an adversarial relationship? Is it a partnership? How do you guys see that?
I think it's evolving. I'm trying to stay positive on that. They all go B2C, so they all compete with us in many different ways through all the acquisitions that they've made over the years. But I think slowly they're starting to come around to licensing content in the digital social world, just like they do in a real money regulated environment. So it's definitely changing, but they've been very reluctant to give up their content to other social operators who, in my case, are their customers on the land-based side, because they don't want to disrupt the B2C businesses that they have and have had for several years now. So it's definitely changing.
Yeah, on the daily fantasy side, it's much different. We're providing at DraftDay a complete regulated business model. So We provide the whole platform, and then the operator feeds into basically a Powerball type model. So all the operators combined create a higher prize pool. Each of them have their own business model, and they're working with their own customer base, but in the end, working together to compete against the B2C players.
And we are working with Ruby 7 Studios. That is running the B2B model. We've got Trop World Casino for Tropicana, and we've got Pachanga is going to be launching very shortly, where Ruby 7 is providing this facility, in concert with the business, and in some the options that the casinos and the casino chains have is to grow it themselves, have one of their slot providers provide it, like Double Down or Psy Games, or come to a place like Ruby 7. So it's a little bit of everything, and it's still kind of moving around and trying to find the happy point. And there's all kinds of different results from the different models.
How about with BlueBat, your relationship with that?
Yeah, so we're seeing, similar to what everyone else was saying, that there's a little bit of hesitation, I guess, for let's say them to put out their real money or their content, but in the social space, because they have their own products and whatnot, and there are various reasons. But the nice thing that we're seeing is this seems to be a slow sort of swell building of land-based operators that are kind of, let's say, trying to work collectively to get that content. And so it seems like eventually it's a more of a matter of it's not if, but it's more like a when is it going to happen. So I think it will happen eventually, where they will be convinced to provide their content to their partners that are their customers on the land-based side, but and then allow them to go through other channels like ours, for example, to put it into their social casino online products.
So yeah, when we're kind of on the reverse of that, where we're bringing hit mobile games onto the casino floor. So that's what I do at all of these conferences. I basically meet with developers who've had hit mobile games that have been downloaded 10, 50, 100 million times. And I say, hey, how about an entirely new revenue stream? This game has been in the top charts, and maybe now it's been tapped out. Well, it can be a huge hit on a casino floor, and it's already known by consumers. So it's more likely that they're going to go and see this game and go, hey, I'll put $100 into that, as opposed to say maybe a TV license or something that they may not exactly know what the gameplay is. So we're more focused on taking games that are hits in the App Store and then bringing them onto the land-based floor.
Now, did you find that the kind of incumbents in the gaming industry, did they embrace you in doing that, or did you have to kind of chip away at getting the concept of these types of games?
It's been a several-year process. I think the interesting thing that I've seen is that even with a lot of the casino operators, their frame of reference when I show them a game that we've just signed that's been a hit $50 million download game, is they'll be like, oh yeah, I think one of my kids plays that. Like they haven't played it themselves, but because they know that the game's sort of a proven hit, they know that the average person that's walking through their floor will probably either have played or have it on their phone. They're pretty open to it, even if they're not a direct fan themselves. And then once in a while, we'll get people who are like, oh my gosh, I was playing that game last week. Oh yeah, sign me up.
Interesting. So because we have such a diverse panel and a lot of experience, I did want to try to open it up a little bit earlier for questions. So if anybody has anything right now that they have a question for the panel, we can kind of integrate it in.
So actually, this is more directed at Gamblit, but it's actually for San Manuel and for everybody else also. This, as you see this more popular mobile or social games coming into the casino, and people start betting on it, do you anticipate? Considering there is a significant regulatory hurdle right now, but as things start changing, do you see any scenario where both kind of merging, where you are actually doing the social and the real money component at the same time, where you are just basically choosing to go one way or another? Or is it kind of you going to say like this is the social keeps operating this way and the real money keeps operating the separate way?
When you say social and real money, do you mean sitting in a casino playing a free-to-play social game, as opposed to one where you're risking money?
Well, I mean, so in a sense, like if you look at the the fantasy, like if you take the fantasy sports people are doing, right? There are free fantasy sports site, and you also have the people who do their own gamblers like that. And at many times, what people might do is you may still play a big free fantasy stuff, but you may have some real money stuff going on between you among us friends as well, where there is like this. You have the same game being played as for simulated for a free-to-play model as well as the real money model at the same time. So I'm just trying to figure out is, as you bring this type of game into the casino, do you see that kind of merging sometime, or because of the regulatory environment, do you see this will continue that real money? Once you bring into the real money, that operates only as real money, and once it's a social, it remains as a social.
Yeah, I see them being very separate in that you wouldn't want to mix your virtual currency with your real money experience, right? Especially with, like you said, regulations are so intense and strict to get through 6 months. But I would say that I think it's an awesome experience for a consumer to be able to play a game and feel not only familiarity but confidence with that game, and be able to say, oh yeah, I've played that on my phone for the last year. I have high scores. I've played my friends. I kick ass. I'm totally going to put $100 in the machine, and especially if it's a skill-based game, they're going to be a lot more apt to jump in and want to play, and then continue playing that game for an extended period of time.
Yeah, just add something to that. You're talking about just having a successful brand. Yeah, going back to at Slingo, a slots bingo game. It started off in AOL, had 10 million people playing on a monthly basis in the late 90s, and then it became probably one of the biggest slot machines in the market. And then 10 years later, we brought it back onto Facebook. It became the biggest game on Facebook and became, a big slot machine game as well as on a mobile device. So they're all separate type of gameplays, I think, is what I'm getting at, and people will enjoy those games separately. And there has to be something different in each version of the game that is specific to that device. Right? You want the gameplay, and Slingo, for example, is basically a match one game, right? So you really couldn't get away from that simplest type of gameplay. But each device had a different feel about it, and you needed to make that game, and you have to make that game for that device feel like, okay, I'm playing on a slot machine, or I'm playing on my mobile device, or I'm playing on my, as a social game, but it also has to feel the same at the same time, and it's not easy. But once you crack that for that brand, then you've got something there, and I think that's where you're finding from your perspective when you're trying to crack those manufacturers or those developers.
So I have more of kind of a little bit of a personal question. So I know, Larry, but when you went from the pinball arcade world into casino gambling, that was a big leap. I know because I was there and watched it. What about going from real money gambling into social? Did you see that there was a dramatic change in your thinking from real money to social, or did a lot of your skills apply as you moved over?
The pinball and video to the gaming side is a lot more interesting question than the one that you're
feel free to
putting
comment
me
on. Yeah.
Because we were a wildly successful coin-operated game company making pinball machines and video games in the 80s and 90s. And this was Williams Electronics, which started WMS Gaming in about 1990 or 91. And the notion was we know all about creating excitement in games and making challenging games, and it's going to be like shooting ducks in a barrel to add all this excitement to the slots and bury IGT. And
in the arcade world, you could literally shoot ducks in a barrel. So
you can. So after, and again, Al came into my department, and he had worked in slots for quite a while, and I didn't know anything about them, and he really was my mentor working for me. And after a lot of study, false starts, mistakes, and crazy things, I came to the conclusion that the things that coin-op entertainment games and coin-op gambling games have in common is you start by inserting a coin. That was it. It was really, about the math, about the chance to win, about the volatility, and just the packaging To an audience, it was much different, where we were catering to 20-somethings and teens, and the gambling audience is 55-year-old women and out from there. It was a much easier jump to go from gaming machines to social for us, because we are creators of successful slot machines on the casino floors. And to be successful on the casino floor, you're one of 50, you're one of 100. For every 50 games that are made, one of them is a smash hit, and the other 49 fizzle really fast. So when you take one of these games with what made it work in a casino and you put it in a social casino, the magic that's in there it translates very well. And so it's been, for all of the real money game companies, it's been pretty consistent. The hits that are in the casinos do very well in social and mobile, and with us, Multi-Strike Poker and Gems Wild Tiles, which are two of our biggest games, are doing really exceptionally well in the products that they're in. And then we've got other successful games that we're doing that are not casino hits, but that's kind of like the 20 to 1 or 50 to 1. You do them and you hope, and maybe we'll have this twist or that twist, and some work and some don't.
Anyone else experience moving from real money to B2B? Any personal kind of come to Jesus moments that you realized it was a dramatically different business, or was it pretty smooth for all of you guys?
I think one of the more interesting one is on the real money side, that 2% that spends a lot of money is considered a problem gambler that you have to deal with. And the 2 to 3% on the social casino side is who's spending all the money. And so, and they don't differ much, right? So you have to treat each of the different aspects of this separately. But other than that, that was my come to. Wow. One, we try to get more out of; the other, we have to stop.
How about you guys? Any comments of moving from one to the other? Or?
Yeah, actually, it's quite similar to my experience. That so the scale is just so different when you look at like the average amount of revenue you're getting from a person when you were on the real money side, and then you're comparing that to what you're getting on the social. At first you want to cry, but then you realize that the scale is just so much greater. So the difference is huge. It's like like order of magnitude or something. But then you understand that the reach is far greater. So in the end, it's all good. And so that was the thing that was sort of a shock to me initially, and also just getting into it. When you talk to people in this, when I moved into social initially 5 years ago, didn't know much about it, but had been in real money at that point for maybe 9 years. And you sort of think about why would a person want to spend so much of their money on a game when there's absolutely no opportunity for them to withdraw. but then you realize well, on the real money side, they have the opportunity, but in reality, many of them are not, and it's all. I mean, part of it is that like expectation, and then the other part is the entertainment. I think this entertainment is trying to capture that and run with that, and I think that's what is the most interesting kind of shift for me is the purpose behind it, trying to build that experience where you want them to do the same thing, play the game, but the why and the how is different.
So I know at Gamblit it's the opposite, right? You came into the realities of what the casino world was like. Comment a little more.
Yeah, I mean, it's been nonstop. Like my first week there, every mobile game that I launched, I would refer to in press and things as very addictive.
Yeah, you don't.
Very quickly learned I was not allowed to use that word ever. Yeah, it's a shocking difference. There's one casual game that I spoke to a developer about, and their LTV in the free-to-play space was $1.50, and their LTV in real money was $85. So there's just these such dramatic differences, in terms of even simple things like how you measure your stats. Your average gambling user does not come in and out of your app every day. They come in probably once a week. Often after they get paid, they play for a bet, they gamble away their money, and then they'll come back. Versus a good free-to-play game, you have a user coming in and out of your app 5 or 6 times a day. Land-based, I think, obviously it's a completely different set of stats as well. So while there are some similarities, while I thought they'd be a lot closer, the two markets and the customers very different. And certainly how you manage your experiences are very different. Good free-to-play games are all about having an experience that keeps your user in there and coming back and playing and building up, etc. Sort of like a Clash of Clans or Clash Royale or Simpsons. Versus land-based, after extensive focus testing, right, we've learned we need something you can learn in 60 seconds at 3 drinks in, at your bachelorette party or whatever. You can be like, oh, this looks fun, throw in $20 on the table and figure it out and start playing. So it's just, it's a very different market.
Well, I can certainly tell my own experience when I went out to the first Casual Connect, and I was the lone casino guy walking around the floor, and I remember Jessica saying, we're going to refund your money because you mistook gaming for the casino gaming. And I was like, no, I want to be here. I want to learn about this industry. I see potential convergence coming. And so at the parties and things, people were asking me, oh, what's your business like? And they told me, what's your conversion rate? And I was like, what's a conversion rate? And they're like, well, that's the percentage of your players that pay. And I'm like, well, it's 100%. It's and I'm like, well, what's your conversion rate? And it's like 2%. I'm like, 2%? How do you people make money? So I definitely had a wake-up moment in that this was a very different business. But it does seem like there is still a very similar demographic, right? So somewhere in between is where it lies. I guess one of the other questions I have is in the B2B world, it seems like there's a little bit more cooperation between providers in the B2B world in social mobile. And in some cases, maybe it's co-opetition. But in the early days of casino and brick and mortar, it was very isolated. You did not share any ideas, you didn't talk about it. And if you were at IGT and you were seen at lunch with a Bally guy, and your manager called you into his office. Do you guys see that there's more cooperation in the social B2B space? Or
It's really been more of a games industry phenomenon, I guess. Being in the game side of the business from the mid-90s on the box product side, my whole Facebook list of friends are from the game industry, right? So you've become friends with people that, as you grew up with them in the space, and it's remained that way. And I don't think people are sharing actual detailed information, but certainly people are friendly in the space, and much different. And I can tell you, coming from retail side and more hardware stuff, you weren't seen with somebody who was a competitor of yours at all. If you were, then you probably would get fired. But the game industry seems to have brought out more of that atmosphere of, it looks like cooperation, but it's just more, I think, friendliness. I don't think anybody's sharing anything.
It's also incredibly incestuous. Everybody bounces company to company every year, so.
I think the world has really changed. I remember those days that you're describing, Al, where everything was top secret and people wouldn't talk to each other, work with each other. I think the way most companies are doing business in 2016 is with collaborations, with communication. Again, Joshi and I work together. We are total competitors in the land-based casino space. We are working together in the social space, and we really openly talk about what's happening here, what's happening there, and that would have never happened 10 years ago, where we really are sharing what we're doing. And it leads to leads and new contacts and introduction and all kinds of other cooperation. The world has changed. The new young set is totally open about everything. I mean, there isn't this big secrecy we used to do, and us old guys are adapting and learning so that we don't go extinct.
Matthew, what do you think?
As an operator, I don't think anybody cooperates as far as the platforms go or content. Just my experience, particularly on the B2B side, I think everybody that has a platform that's looking to partner with a potential operator wants to put the other guy out of business and win the deal. That's just how I think about it, and how I witness it.
All right, we're getting a little bit closer towards the end. Is there any questions from the audience?
Hi. I've noticed with some casino, social casinos, you know, you can play and you can start getting like tickets and free rooms and things like that. I mean, it seems that logically at some point in time, you could probably play the social casino game on a casino website, maybe get free play and things like that. Is there regulations about that, or is it? I mean, it just seems logical at some point. I don't know. Is there some line that can be crossed? Or
Yeah, I mean, no, there's a lot of companies that are offering free play and back in the casino, and I mean that's one of the advantages that as a land-based business that we have a place that people, as opposed to people that are just operating social games, we have a place that people can physically go. And we have the capability of launching extra credit or free play, but we haven't turned it on yet. It's ready to go. We've been taking our time testing it to see what the effects are, and actually to also understand what our players are gonna expect from us. So we've been taking it a little slower than others. A lot of people have already launched that capability and it's out live. I don't know if Tropicana does that or not, but it's out there.
I think it's a state-by-state thing, too. I think,
Yeah.
you know, by state, you can offer rooms, food, things of that nature, and then some state regulations allow you to offer free play in the casino and others don't. So you have to just be aware of where you're at.
Larry, do you know about the Tropicana if it offers?
They are not at this time doing it, and it's something that's looked at and discussed all the time, but at this time it's not being done by in Drop World.
How about at BlueBat? Do you see any of it?
Yeah, so I think it's our situation, the things we've seen is similar, that it's kind of like state by state and kind of like operator by operator. So it's I think it depends on the comfort level, and I think but that comfort level is you know like usually dictated by by the regulations that are enforced. So it seems like some of them some states do allow it, and so I think those casinos in those states from those states would do it, but other ones that do not, then they would try to segment out the offers. And so if you're getting points into your card at the casino, then you'd be able to use those points for things at the casino but not free play. So I think it just depends.
Additional questions from the audience?
Hi. Maybe a more general question, like do you guys have a 5-year prediction of where social casino is heading to? And maybe an additional extra topic, in what way do you see a cooperation between social casino and esports gambling? I don't know, there's a lot of issues around it.
The last piece of esports gambling, that's a real issue that's coming up, and the amount of money being gambled that way. And I think you just saw that one group is being sued, and Steam and Valve are having to take down their APIs. You've got $7 billion being wagered with skins, with basically kids. And I think the comment from the guy from CS Lotto was, but I wasn't marketing towards kids, after he admitted that it was gambling. I think that is going to take, that's going to go away. And I was at a National Council of Problem Gambling conference last week, and that is like top on their list of being able to shut down. But a 5-year plan, I couldn't give you a 5-day plan, but it's challenging. I'll tell you, someone who was running Slingo, when I saw Social Casino come up with Playtika, it was really the first one. I was the first one to say, who the hell would do that? Pay money, right? Because Slingo was a free-to-play game, and we made money on advertising. So I was, at that point, quite wrong in terms of who would play, like everybody does.
I said the same thing about free-to-play when it came out. It's like, really? You can't win anything? People are paying money?
Additional questions? So, the whole regulatory side of things is kind of interesting because back in the real money, the laws were written in pencil so they could change them. So, for example, when one of the manufacturers put out a South Park slot machine, the regulator said, "Hey, this is marketing to kids." They called it Slots for Tots, and boom, the laws were changed to reflect that. Is there a concern that at some point there's going to be regulation thrown on social gaming, even if it doesn't pay out money? And do you guys have any plans if something like that did come down?
Yes, I think that was the other big topic last week at the Problem Gambling Council. They realized that it's a $4 billion industry, and as I mentioned before, the 2 to 3% who are spending the money are the ones they're trying to help on the casino side. And they are struggling with that, and they're working with legislators to try to, put some regulation into social casino games. That's part of their agenda over the next year.
Do you guys see the same?
I'm not sure. I don't have any insight in terms of what the regulators are looking at, but I would kind of think that if they were to head down that path, it couldn't be kind of like regulated only on the social casino side. I mean, it's those games, strategy games, action games, all these games are all free to play. It's just the genre is different. I mean, I know you can draw like a closer sort of correlation between a social casino and real money casino, but at the end of the day, there's really no difference in the mechanics of, a social casino game and then, Clash of Clans and Farmville, all these types of games. So if it were to happen, so I personally don't think it's going to happen anytime soon, but I don't know. I could be wrong.
Well, I think to add on to that, when you look at the addictive nature of gambling content, social casino games have all of them except for being able to win money, and I think that's what's really struck in the mindset as this industry has grown, and they've seen a lot of calls coming from that end. So it's just out there right now. Whether anything happens or not, it's being discussed, and not just here in the U.S. but in the UK and in Australia. So we'll see what happens with that.
Matthew, you?
No, I was just going to add what Rich said. I mean, there's been laws, there's been legislators and regulators that want to get involved in this space. There was a law that got defeated in Singapore just recently. There's been some noise coming out of Massachusetts over the last couple months. I mean, it's definitely gathering steam. Australia is another big market where there's a senator there who's been after slot machines and social casino slot machines for a number of years now. So I think it's definitely something that we have to be mindful of no matter where we operate.
So I guess we're coming to the end here. I have one kind of final question. If somebody's currently in real money and they want to move into the social space, or if they're in the social space and they want to try to move to real money and they're just a new startup company, is there any advice you would give to somebody who's trying to make that move in one direction or another?
If you're a new startup company, focus on what you're trying to start up and don't try to jump to 2 markets at once.
We were talking about before, if you've got a brand that can make the leap, then you make the leap. But build your brand before you make the leap, because then you're going to be supporting 2 things that have no opportunity for success.
Anyone else?
My advice to people who have games that they pitch us that they want to bring it into a casino floor is always like, think about the 90s arcade that we all grew up in and what types of experiences work there. If you can pick it up fast, if it's fun to play, if it's got some type of fun, compelling loop, it's probably going to work well on a casino floor. If it takes 10 minutes to understand and then you've got to have something where you could put at least an hour in, that's not going to work on modern arcade floor.
So I guess I would add that if you want to start, let's say, your own B2C social, or let's say like your own B2C real casino, but you did not have something to leverage like a land-based property or an IP or something like that, I would say my advice would be to not do it. But if you have something, I think that the key is, because there's so much competition out there, I think the key is trying to understand what is it that that business or entity has that can be leveraged, and then trying to understand that and trying to take that to the max. That'd be my advice.
I think what you were talking about is what goes back 25, 30 years ago with Atari. Easy to learn, hard to master, and nothing's changed in games.
Yep, exactly.
Well, I guess with that, I'd like to thank the panel for all their insights. So thanks a lot, guys.